Welcome to Commercial Conversations Over Coffee, the show where two college dropouts turned real estate millionaires discuss all aspects of commercial real estate investing. Now, welcome your hosts, Tyler Cobble and apartment guy Bruce Peterson.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to Commercial Conversations Over Coffee. I am Tyler Cobble, joined as always by my good friend, Bruce Peterson. Bruce, how was your weekend? How was your Christmas?
Oh, my Christmas was great. We just saw the kid off. She came in, she was here with us for about a week, and then she flew straight to Tulum to hang out in Cancun, Mexico for 10 days. So
That sounds
she's
terrible.
having a little more fun than me.
Yeah, why aren't you going to Mexico? What are you doing?
Somebody told me I got to be on a podcast, and if I'm going to be on a podcast, I have to be sitting in my office. That's what you told me. So I was told I couldn't go by you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm the Grinch here, keeping you from going to Mexico. My family actually went to Mexico too, and I actually decided not to go, which was tough because on Wednesday you and I are closing on a deal, and so I've got to be in town to make sure that we get that all wrapped up. So that's been interesting, but yeah, well, we had a pretty interesting Christmas morning here in Nashville. It's been
Unfortunately.
yeah, man, it's been a wild few days. For anybody that I guess has been living under a rock or maybe doesn't keep up with news, there was a suicide bombing in downtown Nashville on Christmas morning, actually right in front of where I used to live, which is kind of wild to think about. I literally used to live. He was right outside 166 Second Avenue, and I lived at 160, and
Wow.
so all of those historic buildings are destroyed. I think one of them is going to have to get torn down. But yeah, it's been weird. I mean, so my little sister's dad actually owns a hotel at 154 Second Avenue, and they had a camera outside that picked up audio. So we were one of the first in the country to hear what was going on right before it happened. I mean, he was playing music over the loudspeakers, which was very creepy. And he had a warning: evacuate the area. There's a bomb playing. So which is really interesting. I mean, clearly, he didn't want to kill anybody. So he set that off for about an hour, trying to get everybody out of the area. And thankfully, the first responders in Nashville, shout out to them, did a phenomenal job. They ran into the area as soon as they started hearing the bomb threats and started evacuating all of the buildings. So it's kind of unbelievable to think there were 41 buildings damaged and only 3 people were hospitalized, and those were with minor injuries. I mean, it's
Yeah, the only
remarkable
death,
that there were. Do what?
the only death was him, too. So that was
Yeah.
unfortunate that he took his own life, but at least it was fortunate that he didn't take anybody else with him.
No kidding. No kidding. So yeah, it's been a weird few days in Nashville. That's for sure. I mean, Nashville's had a hell of a year, man. I mean, we got hit by the tornado. Then we got hit by the derecho. Then coronavirus. Now this bombing. But the good thing is Nashville's pretty resilient, man. So we're bouncing back.
Yeah, and I think that's key, right? That we'll make it through this. We make it through everything. We had a serial bomber. I think it was a serial bomber now a year or two ago in Austin. Things are going to happen. We got to keep moving. We can't freak out and shut our own lives down because there are some loose cannons out there. I don't want to. I almost use the word whack job, but that's unfair, right? Because yes, that's the gut reaction. What a nut job. What a piece of shit. Well, I don't know what was going on with that dude. I hate to judge because who knows what he was dealing with. What he did was uncalled for, right? There's no good reason to do it ever. But at the same time, I don't know what he's dealing with. I hate what he did. I hate that he took his own life, and I hate that he caused a lot of destruction, a lot of fear. My wife is flying out today to go into Nashville to hang out with you at some of our businesses. So yeah, it can get scary sometimes, but again, we're going to make it through this. So I just, as soon as it happened, you start seeing all kinds of crazy crap flying all over social media. It was the left, it was the right, it was this, it was nobody knows. Well, now we kind of know. I don't know that we completely know a motive, but I hate that people jump to conclusions immediately and want to blame somebody. This dude had problems. Why he did what he did, who knows? But it's important that everybody's safe. It didn't impact many of us directly, and a few of us it did impact indirectly, or it did, harm some buildings, but we didn't lose life. So we'll make it through it. We'll keep pushing, head up. Don't retreat. Don't put your head in the sand, or you're never going to make a change in your life.
That's right. I mean, look, the great thing about Nashville, I mean, what's been trending this year is hashtag Nashville Strong. And there's not a better two words that could describe the city. Nashville's so good at coming together and helping each other through this stuff that it's unfortunate, but we'll get through it. And so everybody's kind of taking that sentiment, and we always look on the positive side, and the positive side of it is that no one was killed. I think that's remarkable.
Right. So how are communications? Is Wi-Fi, is internet, is cell services, all that back up?
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know as well, so the bomb went off right outside of the AT&T, essentially the AT&T Southern network hub. So if it had fully destroyed that building, I think it would have knocked out AT&T Communications in the Southeast. That's my understanding, at least. That may not be fully true, but what they did knock out was AT&T in Tennessee, both cellular and Wi-Fi, and then in a good chunk of Kentucky as well. So everything's back up and running now. I mean, they've been working around the clock to get it going. They've been putting up mobile cell towers. They got people in there to start repairing the building. Unfortunately, the building caught fire again after they, had gotten in there and started repairing it. But my phone's working again. I was worried, being in commercial real estate, obviously we live by our phones. And so, I thought I was going to have to go in this morning and get a burner phone to start calling people. But fortunately, everything was back up and running. So we're all good to go.
Yeah, it's hard to conduct business when you don't have internet and you don't have cell service. Things like this happen every once in a while, and you start to realize how dependent we are upon that crap. But it is what it is. Our worlds slow down, if not some aspects of it stop when you lose communication like that. So when it happened, I'll be honest with you, right? You're like a brother to me, or a son, whatever you want to call it, but I couldn't get a hold of you. And I was getting nervous, because I know how you are. You and I are very similar in this manner. I think that I want to be in the middle of it to see what I can do to help, to see who I can help. And that's going through my brain thinking that's who you are too. And I can't get a hold of you. And I'm like, so, I'm a little nervous, but, I figured you were okay, but until we know for sure, you just don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate
you can probably
that.
hear the pressure washers washing the outside of my house when we getting paint done, so I apologize.
No, it's all good. Yeah, it was, it was bizarre. I mean, I woke up to a bunch of texts and calls that morning because, so cell service was actually working for a little bit afterwards. They had to cut it off due to the exposed gas lines. But I used to live right there, and a lot of people knew that, and so they were all freaking out, calling me, making sure I didn't still live there, which is good to see. That people were reaching out like that. But anyway, that's not the main conversation of what we're supposed to be diving in today. I'm pretty excited. So last week, Bruce and I were talking about what we should talk about on this episode, and we were in the midst of the Senate and Congress passing the latest relief bill. And it actually ended up getting signed by President Trump last night. So it couldn't be any better timing for us to be talking about this. But Bruce, you want to tell everybody kind of what we're going to be talking about with the Coronabus?
Right. So, yeah, that's what I'm here to call it, too, is the Coronabus. So basically, they've passed another stimulus package at, I think it's $908 billion. And there's multiple levels of that stimulus package. You'll qualify for some, you won't qualify for others. But the two big ones for what we do, right? So the eviction moratorium. So you can't evict anybody, period. It's not tied to lending. It's not tied to anything other than the federal government saying nobody can be evicted, period, until January 31st at the earliest. Now, they may extend it once again. They've extended it multiple times, but that was one thing that came out. So we can't evict anybody. And remember, every time we talk about this specific thing, I want to make sure people understand. I never want to evict anybody. I don't think any of us ever do, but sometimes for the health of your business, you have to. But right now we can't, which does have economic implications to our businesses. Luckily, not big enough yet to where it really affects us too badly. But anyways, we can't evict anybody at least through January 31st. And then for business owners, you have another round of PPP, or payroll protection program, that you can qualify for, but it's a little different than last time. Last time, it was basically just submit an application, and we will give you up to 2.5 times, 2.5 months worth of payroll. And it was kind of a blanket thing. Now, what they've said, because they've had more time to digest what's going on with coronavirus and all of that, so they changed it a little bit to say, look, you can qualify, but only if you can show 25% of your income has been lost because of this. So if, let's say, you had $100,000 in monthly income and suddenly it went down to 150, well, you've been affected by 25%. So then you would be eligible for the payroll protection program. So it's there for people that need it, but there are some new strings attached to it. And, I think they're just trying to make sure that everybody doesn't get it if you don't need it. Because when they just offer it to everybody, well, everybody's going to take you up on it. Even people that don't really need it, that weren't negatively impacted at all. So they did that to try to change it. And of course, we've got the extension of unemployment benefits at $600 a month. And $300 weekly for 11 weeks. But since it took an extra week to get it signed, it might only be 10 weeks because it's supposed to run through the end of March. So it looks like for the next 10 weeks, everybody will get $300 in weekly additional unemployment benefits. And then you get the stimulus, right? $600 for adults and $600 for each of their dependent children. But that starts to phase itself out after you make over $75,000 a year as a single person. And I think it's $115,000 a year as a head of household, and maybe $127,500 for married filing jointly or something like that. So there are thresholds, but there is another $600 check coming. But the president has said that he's going to try to get $2,000. I think the Democrats are saying they want $2,000. So we'll see what happens. But the bill that got signed was for $600. So I think there might be some things with EIDL, the small business loans you can get, but that's a high level from what I understand. And I'm pulling information from multiple sources. It's very disparate right now. I didn't go and find it at .gov. I found it from some reputable sources. So that's my understanding at a very high level. What have you found out, or what do you think is different than what I said?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're pretty much right on it. I looked at the National Association of Realtors; they put out a pretty good article on it, and then also taxfoundation.org has some pretty good information if you want to really dive into this further. And I will leave those links in the show description below. But some of the other aspects of it, you did touch on the EIDL, the economic injury disaster loans. The new relief bill has an additional $20 billion for that. It also provides $25 billion to the states through September 30th, 2022 for rental assistance. And it allows landlords to apply for these funds on behalf of tenants, which, I think is massive, and it was much needed. If we're not going to be able to evict people, which, like Bruce said, nobody ever wants to go through that process. But at the end of the day, if you don't have renters paying you, your bank's not just going to say, oh, yeah, don't worry about paying any bills. I mean, you still have to make your mortgage payments. You still have to pay your taxes. There's still a lot of expenses that are related to that. And we all know that as property owners. That $25 billion includes payments for rent in arrears, as well as utilities and other expenses related to housing. And it extends, like Bruce said, the federal eviction ban through the end of January. So that has gotten extended several times. We will certainly see what that is going to look like in the future. I would imagine it's going to continue to be extended on a 30-day rolling basis for the foreseeable future. The bill also provides new money for schools and vaccine distribution, I think, which is wonderful. I mean, the sooner we get the vaccine out there, the better everybody can get back to work, and we can stop talking about all this and worrying about it. It'll be interesting to see what else comes out of it. Like Bruce said, Trump is already talking about giving $2,000 more to Americans. I think that's a great idea. There were also some impacts on, LIHTC. If you do low-income housing tax credits, there's now an increased allocation to the states. which will subsidize the construction and rehab of housing developments that have, income limits, which, we've talked about this before, that, we feel that affordable housing is probably going to skyrocket in popularity and demand following this following this pandemic, because, if the government's going to tell you can't evict anybody and your people aren't paying rent, they're not making money to pay rent, what's better than having government subsidized housing? I mean, the government's obviously going to continue paying that, which is great. And then the other thing, which I certainly appreciate as a real estate professional, is the deduction for business meals. That was actually cut a couple of years ago down to 50%. For a 50% deduction. And now for 2021 and 2022, it is 100%. You are allowed to deduct 100% of your business meals, which is very exciting to me because I'm always out entertaining people, as I'm sure you are too, Bruce.
Yeah, so it's not a huge thing, but it does matter, right? Yeah, because if you're taking somebody out and it's a $50 meal, you have to be able to write off $25 of it. So, I hope $50 doesn't sound like, weird, right? Because I was just thinking, as I said, that yeah, I could take somebody to Taco Bell or McDonald's and have a $10 lunch, but when you're trying to, this is just mindset again, right? If you're trying to raise money, if you're trying to land clients, if you're trying to gain new business, then you don't want to be taking people to McDonald's, right? So, we're going to a little nicer places, but yeah, it does start to add up because, there's many weeks where I will have 2 or 3 or 4 different lunches planned, some dinners sometimes. So yeah, it's a small thing, but it really does matter.
Yeah, I mean it adds up. So let's dive into the evictions. How are you personally handling that? How do you see this playing out if the government doesn't continue to pass these stimulus bills, but makes everybody stay at home?
Well, everybody understands because we do a very good job of communicating at the property level. Our property teams are communicating constantly with the residents to make sure they understand that, look, we can't evict you. True. You still owe rent. Now, while we can't evict you, maybe you choose not to pay rent even if you can because you're nervous and you think, I want to bankroll money and I want to have an emergency fund that I didn't have before. This is going to allow me to develop that emergency fund. All fine, right? But if you're going to go that route, first of all, we're going to put you on a payment plan. We're going to allow you time to pay off all the back rent that you owe. So we're reasonable. We're trying to work with everybody. But at the same time, when the eviction moratorium or ban is finally lifted, because someday it will finally be lifted, you still owe for all that back rent. And we make sure everybody knows that if you've gone, just to make an example, this hasn't happened, but if it were to happen, let's say you go 12 months at $1,000 a month for rent. When the eviction ban is lifted, if you haven't made any of those payments, as soon as that eviction ban is lifted, you better come up with $12,000 or you're going to get evicted. Now, it'll take some time. It's a 30 to 60 Texas to evict. So you might be able to buy another month or 2 of not paying any rent and then just deal with the eviction when it comes. Some people are professional lease hoppers, if you will, and this is just the way they live their lives, which I don't agree with at all. But again, we're communicating, making sure people understand that that's still a liability. It's just one that's being pushed off. So, most people that we've offered payment plans to, they've taken us up on it, and they realize that, look, I do still owe this. So as soon as I can pay it in full, I need to be doing so. So they're making the payments they can. Many people, I would say probably 92 to 94% of our residents across the portfolio, they're still making rent payments. So we're not really that bad off right now. This is where people that are just assholes to people, the thing that comes to mind because it's on TV right now, Leona Helm, many of you probably don't know who that person is, but she was like a famous landlord that was basically a slumlord in New York. You treat people like crap. You treat them as a slumlord owner. When things like this happen, they have no sympathy for you. They're not in this with you. They don't care that you might go under. When you show these people respect, you treat them with dignity and you try to help them through it. It's to your benefit to try to help them through it, but then they're also going to see that, look, they were helping me through this time when I needed help. So when the eviction ban is up, I'm going to make them whole. So it goes back to treat people well, be helpful in every way you can, treat people with dignity, and it makes things go a lot better and a lot smoother.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, the more sympathy and empathy that you can have for your tenants, obviously working with the tenants that you already have is your best option. Sure, there are people moving around right now, but it's a lot tougher to deal with that and find new tenants than it is to keep the ones that you already have. We wrote very early on in the pandemic about how to handle that for landlords. Work with the tenants where you can. Put a plan together with those tenants. And also, one thing that we did too, and I think that this is great advice for anybody that's going through that right now, is be willing to work with the businesses that apply for the PPP loan. We made it very clear early on that any tenants that didn't apply for the PPP loan, that we weren't gonna try and work with them because they're not trying to help themselves. And that is 100% what the PPP loan is intended to do, is to help these businesses make those payments. And so if they're not going to go through that to help themselves, I mean, it's literally free money for them to cover their expenses while we're going through all of this, then, why should you as a landlord stick your neck out on the line and help them as well? And so, one thing to note too, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, is it is forgivable. So, yes, it's technically a loan. If it is properly utilized, then you don't have to worry about paying that back, which, of course, is it's a lifeline right now. I mean, it's helped a lot of businesses get through this.
We talk about treating people with dignity and respect and, being as helpful as we can. But, it just made me think. I know one person specifically. I know this person personally. They applied for PPP. They got it. They went out and bought a car. I'm like,
wow,
what the hell is wrong with you? What in the F is wrong with you? Well, what they decided was, and I think this was fairly common. I wouldn't say half the people did this, or probably even 20% of the people did this, but I know people did this. This person thought, well, you know what? I want a car. And it won't be forgivable, but I think the interest rate on it is like 2% or 1%. It's a ridiculously low interest rate. So they thought, well, hell, that's better than an interest rate, the interest I can get from a bank or a lender. So, hey, I'm just, everybody's going to do whatever they're going to do. I don't want to say that's wrong. You're terrible. Again, to each their own. I just don't approve of that myself. That's not the way I conduct my life. This is something that comes up too in a lot of speeches that I give, trying to help people understand what's going on. And there's been a study done. I've seen it done 3 times in the last 20 years. And forgive me, I can't remember who conducted the study. But what they do is they ask, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, how do you plan on providing for yourself and your loved ones in your golden years? Right? You're 60, 70, 80 years old. How are you going to provide for yourself? You're thinking, I'm setting aside money in a 401k, an IRA. I'm doing different things. I'm investing my money. I'm saving this much money. Well, the number one and number two answer on all 3 results of this that I've seen, number one is I'm going to win the lottery. If that's your plan for retirement, you're so screwed, and maybe you don't realize it. That is asinine. That is ridiculous. The second most common answer is I'm going to sue somebody. So to me, that goes back to these people that took out the PPP and the EIDL loans with no intention of getting it waived, because I'm just going to go buy, I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm going to buy a car. I'm going to whatever, it's that mindset that how can I get over on the system? How can I take somebody else's shit? Go get your own shit. Don't try to take my shit. I busted my ass for my shit. Sorry, cussing a lot right now, but it's that mindset that, guys, if you would just apply all of that ingenuity and all that ass busting you're doing, trying to figure out how to get by on somebody else, get over on somebody else, what kind of a success could you have been on in your own right rather than trying to take money from other people? So, sorry, tangent, but it's just something that bugs the hell out of me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's obviously not what the PPP is intended for, and hopefully the majority of people are actually using it for what it is supposed to do. One of the interesting things about this latest round is that it's actually been expanded what expenses it'll cover, which is pretty exciting because the first go round it was there to cover employee wages and operating expenses like rent and utilities. Now it's been expanded to include covered property damage, supplier costs, worker protection expenditures such as personal protective equipment, PPE, not to be confused with PPP. But those are all expenses that businesses are still having to pay for going through all of this. So it's nice to see that is now available. One thing to note too, and there was a lot of confusion around this the first go round. The PPP is intended for businesses. Why should I, or do I even qualify for that as a property investor? Absolutely you do, because you likely own that asset in an LLC or in a corporation, or maybe even if you own it personally, that is still technically a business that you are operating. So you do have expenses. Even though it's an investment, you have expenses, you have operating expenses, you have employees, you have all that kind of stuff. So you do qualify for this as much as the coffee shop down the street qualifies for a PPP loan. So be sure to apply as early as you can. I mean, it is a forgivable loan, and one thing that they specifically noted in the CARES Act is that PPP loans will not be counted as taxable income either. Typically forgivable loans are considered taxable income. So, they're doing everything that they can to provide as much assistance to businesses going through this as seems reasonable. Now, I did say everything they can. It has been somewhat of a carnival or a circus watching, both sides of the aisle dance around this. You look at other countries across the world who have been paying their citizens, every week since the pandemic started. And, for whatever reason, the United States cannot seem to do that. But that is neither here nor there. This is not a political talk show.
Right. So, I want to hit on the PPP thing that you were talking about before, the initial thing that came through the CARES Act months and months ago. Part of the PPP was that it was only for what they deemed to be a legitimate business, and they didn't see an investment as a legitimate business. So initially it was decided that no, if you own real estate, you don't qualify. Well, to kind of dive into that a little deeper, there was lots of pushback, lots of lobbying going on. Lobbying is not necessarily a bad word. A lot of people attach a negative connotation to lobbying. It's people out there speaking on your behalf with your best interests in mind, looking out for your interests. But so when they said initially that you won't be able to get it if you just own an apartment complex, okay, well, that's what all of us do that are in my space. Well, what we did, because we own our own management company, our property management company, we were fine because that in their eyes was a legitimate business, not an investment. I think the initial thought was that, well, these investments, you're rich people if you can make investments in apartment complexes, so you don't really need the help. We need to help really, truly small businesses, not investment vehicles. Well, so again, since we own our own property management company, the way it should ideally work, and some people don't do it this way, and I think they're making a big mistake, but it came back to show itself in another positive light when we do it the right way. When I own 4, 5, 6 apartment complexes and I own a management company, the employees that work on that property, they are not employees of that property at all. They're not employees of the investment. They are employees of the management company. The management company will then place employees where they need to throughout the portfolio. But because they are employees of the management company and not of the investment itself or of the apartment complex itself, well, now I don't have to worry about that weird wrinkle that they put into the CARES Act initially, because I'm running all my payroll through one company, right? Because my property management company pays for those employees. So the property management company took out the PPP loan, the individual properties didn't. If you don't have your own property management company, something like that would not have worked. Now, they've since kind of rectified that, it sounds like, that even investment vehicles do qualify because they do have their own overhead. And a lot of people that are investing in real estate, it's not like they're rich. They've just put their 401k or their IRA into real estate, and that might pay them $2,000 to $3,000, $4,000 a month, and that is their retirement. So it's very vitally important for those people too. But again, just a small wrinkle that if you're going to own a management company and you're going to own real estate, the management company should own the employees, not the properties.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're applying for the PPP for every single one of our entities because why not? I mean, that's what the money is there for. It's there to cover those expenses. Bruce, moving forward, it seems like the stimulus packages keep coming because they have to come. I mean, how do you see this impacting real estate investing in 2021?
Well, I think 2021, we talked about it a little bit last week, that, I don't think in commercial real estate, you're going to see a huge impact, especially in multifamily. Prices keep going up, cap rates keep going down, interest rates keep going down. So, think about the value proposition when you're trying to figure out how much something is worth. The lower the interest rate, the less of my profit generated has to go to making interest payments on the loan. So now I can afford to pay a higher price to get the same return, right? That's why as interest rates go down, almost always your prices of the properties will go up. But that's what's happening. Interest rates have fallen through the floor, cap rates have fallen through the floor. And remember, when a cap rate goes down, the value goes up. So values have gone up. I just got an unsolicited offer for a 200-unit property I own. I paid $18 million for it, and I think maybe $18.7 million. And they contacted me, said, "Hey, we are interested in your property." I said, "Look, I'm not really interested in selling this at all. It's a great property for me, but if I were, it would have to be around $34 million." And I'm not talking about this to try to impress anybody, to freak anybody out. It's to kind of explain what's going on right now. So I've owned this thing for about 3 years now, and almost 3.5 actually. Paid $18.7 million for it, and I told them it's going to have to be $32 to $34 million for me to consider it. They came back and said, "Hey, that number works for me." Like, oh, okay. So then I started thinking about it.
You didn't ask enough.
Right. Well, so before I was like, I'm just going to throw out a big number to choke them so they'll go away. Well, then they said, "Nope, that works." I'm like, oh crap, I really need to think about this now. Do I want to sell it? So I went back to them and said, "Look, we're going to hold off. We're going to hold off for about another year or two before we decide to sell it." And they said, "Okay, well, what if we could come back with a higher number? Maybe that would move your needle a little more." So, because interest rates have taken such a dive, profitability has stayed relatively stable. Yes, it has gone down because of COVID, but most smart investors know that's a short-term trend. That will eventually, be gone. We will get back to normal profitability and everything will be good. So people are willing to pay up more now than they were before. So I bet I could ask them for $36 million on a property that I paid $18 million for roughly. But remember, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. If I bought it for 18 and I sell it for 36, I didn't double my investors' money. We didn't double our investment. We doubled the value of the property. Remember, I take out a loan that I only have to put 25% down for, maybe 20% down. That doubling of the price of the property will turn into a 4 or 5x in the right circumstances, at least a 3x return, meaning if you as an individual investor invested $10,000 in a deal that had that happen, you would look to take out $30,000 to $40,000, maybe as much as $50,000 when the property sells. That's incredible. At a zero. All of our investments have a $100,000 minimum. If you invest $100,000, you might walk with $300,000 to $500,000. So I wanted to do it that way because we're always trying to educate as we're going through this. So I don't want to just say what I think is going to happen. I want to kind of explain kind of the inner workings of these assets and these deals. So I think the prices are going to continue to stay where they are, if not go even higher. Cap rates will continue to go lower. Remember, when they go lower, your value goes up. So because interest rates are so low, and the Fed has shown no interest in raising interest rates anytime soon. So I don't think we're going to be negatively impacted by this much, if at all. And vaccines are starting to flow a little slower than some might have hoped or expected, but they're going out. More and more vaccines will be coming online. So I think we're going to be past this in the next 6 to 9 months. I think there's still, if people thought a vaccine meant, oh, tomorrow it's good. No, 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 no. It's going to take a while to get everybody vaccinated. The herd mentality, the herd immunity thing to kick in. So it's going to take some time. Once all that happens, then we have to start opening businesses back up. Then people need to start getting reemployed. Then people need to wait 2 to 4 weeks for their first paycheck. It's going to take a little bit of time for this to unwind itself, but it's in process right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're going out. One thing that I was thinking about is, like, how do you underwrite a property? What level of risk do you need to have do you need to discount for in your underwriting, considering where we are at the moment? But if you're looking at the 5 to 7 year term, I mean, it's going to be gone, right? I mean, we're dealing with a lot of developers that are moving into Nashville. For whatever reason, development absolutely took off when the pandemic hit. And I think it's because they look at their projects on 2 to 3 year horizons. And they didn't see coronavirus is really impacting what they're doing. I mean, we put under contract some of the biggest land deals we've ever done to build 300 plus multifamily units, because these developers look at it and they go, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when we deliver this product, this will be so far gone that it won't matter. And everybody else will have been freaking out, and they would have put their projects on hold and not buying anything. And so you think about that, the opportunity 2 to 3 years from now, they may be one of the few apartment complexes that gets delivered, which means that they'll be one of the most in demand that year, which of course always helps with your investment returns.
Right. That's on the development side, but when you're buying stabilized assets, and again, what we do typically is multifamily. Same thing. You just got to make sure you can get through the next 6 to 12 months and not, have to go upside down. You do need to set a better expectation for your investors that, look, while we get this thing kind of back to where it should be, 6 to 9 months, the returns might not be great, but once it gets back to where it was prior, our returns will look good. So you just got to communicate well to your prospective investors. Don't overdo your projections. Understand that it's going to take a little while once you close on that asset to get it kind of back to where it was before the pandemic, but it's going to get back there. So like you said, the people that can see out past this kind of fear piece right now, they're going to do fine. We're all going to do okay. And again, even if things get worse from here, think about 2008, 2009. The people that I know that were buying in 2005 and 6, as long as they were good business people and good operators. Now, operator could mean you're just good at overseeing the property management company you hire to run these properties for you. If you're a good operator and you bought smart, the people that I know that bought back in 2005, 6, and 7, they didn't lose their properties. So even as bad as that got, we were still fine. It may have carried out your whole timeline a little longer than you anticipated, but we were fine. Real estate, I always fear saying real estate is very forgivable. Well, but it is. But I fear when I say that kind of thing that people go, oh, well, then anything that I put on a piece of paper, worst case scenario, it's not going to go too bad. I'm not saying that either. You can still screw this up. You can still lose your property. You can still go bankrupt and all that. But it is a very forgivable industry if you run it right and you're diligent in the way you underwrite conservatively, you buy right, and you manage right.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, if you compare real estate to any other investment vehicle, you can't buy something and then 6 months later sell it and expect to make a decent return. I mean, sure, that happens, but if you got to look at it at a 5 to 7 year period. You can't get worried and hung up on short-term market volatility. If you take any 5 to 7 year period, I would imagine even if you bought in 2006 and you held for 7 years, you would have done just fine on that investment. I mean, that's just how real estate is. You cash flow it for a little bit, and maybe like Bruce has talked about before, maybe you end up getting an 8, 10, or 12% return, and that's less than what you had originally anticipated. But that's still an 8, 10, or 12% return, and it's backed by a tangible asset, a physical piece of property, which, you know, we always talk about worst case scenarios. In a worst case scenario in stocks, like the market bottoms out, the company goes bankrupt, you lose 100% of whatever you invested in that company. With real estate, you still have something at the end of the day, even if the market bottoms out. So maybe you lose a lot of money, but you're not going to lose everything. At least that's kind of how I look at it when I'm investing in real estate.
What you can, right? So again, everybody has to understand you can lose everything, because if you have to give back a property, basically you get foreclosed on. Well, you lost everything, because there's still value in that piece of property unless you pay cash, right? If you pay cash, you will recoup some of your losses. Obviously, you'll get some of your money back. Most of us are going to put loans on these things. So if I have to give it back to the bank, and let's say they take it from us, we file bankruptcy or whatever we're going to do, they're going to take the property down. They're going to try to fire sale it. They don't want to hold this thing. They don't know how to operate these damn things. They provide loans. That's what they do. So they're going to try to sell this property down. And there's a very good chance that since you lost the property, it's probably not in the best of shape. So they're not going to get full market value for it. So they might have to sell for a 20, 30% discount. If you have a 70% loan and you sell it for a 30% discount, you break even, right? That's very superficial. I mean, very basic understanding of it. But just for this example, the bank's made whole. So they're not going to come after you for any shortfall when they sell the property, because they made their 70% loan back in the sale. Your money's still gone, right? All of your investment, if you invested 10,000 or 100,000, so it's highly unlikely, if you keep your eyes on your business, you operate well, and you buy with a margin of safety, it's very hard for that scenario to play itself out. But I've got to make sure that everybody understands it could happen. Again, highly unlikely, a lot more rational than the stock market, but it is possible to lose all of your investment.
Yeah, that's a very important clarification there. Okay, awesome. Well, one thing that I want to talk about too is, we mentioned it earlier in the show, is the deal that we're closing on Wednesday. Bruce, you want to kind of talk about what we've got going on?
Yep. So we are doing this multi-use food hall kind of concept with micro office, micro retail. We're going to have some micro restaurants in there. We're going to have some event space, outdoor seating. Something that keeps coming up. I want to kind of stop a little bit and talk about something that people are asking me questions about. Well, Bruce, everything's outdoors. Well, what happens if it's 100 degrees outside? What happens if it's raining? Well, we have an event space that's very large that we're going to build. It's going to be roughly 8 to 10,000 square feet. That can easily be repurposed, and that's the idea behind it, right? So we can rent it out as event space, make some money there. But if it's inclement weather and, we can't have the restaurants have to shut their doors because it rains, because all the seating's outdoors, we have this huge space available that people can sit in also. So we have that covered. So I don't want people to get all freaked out about it, but this is such a great concept that not many people have done anything like this. Lots of food halls have been developed. And again, the food hall is just one part of this concept, but most food halls are indoor. With COVID, that's been a little bit of a scary thing for people. They don't want to sit indoors. And some places in the country are not even allowing restaurants to have indoor seating right now, as we've seen spikes in cases. Well, that's not what we're doing. We're building outdoor seating with the capability of indoor seating should people choose, or should we need to do it. We have rooftop access. So, it's a great way for people that still want to own their restaurants, open restaurants, to have a smaller footprint instead of a 2,000 to 4,000 square foot space. If I can rent a 600 square foot space for my restaurant concept, that's a lot less risky than having to build out a 5,000 square foot space. So we're providing a big service, if you will, or filling a niche for that industry. But also, it's a great destination that we're going to build. I mean, look at that. It's beautiful. It's helping to revitalize East Nashville. That is big. I think we're at the forefront of the, I don't always like this word, but the gentrification that's coming to the area, the cleaning up of the area. So yeah, it's just a great project that the projection for the investors is a 20% IRR within the first 4 to maybe 5 years. We might deliver a little earlier than that, but we're underwriting 4 to 5 years just to be on the safe side. But great project.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to say too, because some people don't invest using internal rates of return, IRRs. It is a 21.44% annualized cash on cash return, which means in that 4 to 5 year period, your annualized cash on cash return each year is about 21.44%. What I love about this concept is that it is honestly the most Nashville development that we could have possibly come up with. Nashville is very similar to Austin, where you've got a lot of, it is an entrepreneurial city. You've got the Entrepreneur Center and a number of startup and tech hubs here. And so what this development is designed to do is to accommodate those startup businesses in a much more affordable fashion than what has traditionally been offered to them. It's 5 minutes from downtown, so the location is incredibly convenient. But yeah, we've got restaurant bays starting at 430 square feet. Which, if you're looking to test out a concept, you don't have to spend 6 or 7 figures to build out a space. You don't have to sign a 5 or a 10-year lease. This really gives you options to come in and test out something new, something different. Same with the micro retail. I mean, those suites are starting at around 400 square feet as well. They go up to, maybe 800 square feet, give or take. So you think about the satellite locations that businesses could have. Maybe they don't want to have a full second location over in East Nashville, but they could use a smaller location just so that they have a presence in the market. I think that's very popular among business owners. We've been proving this micro concept over the last, I'd say, 18 months, and it has leased incredibly well during the pandemic. The micro concepts that we have are actually leasing up faster than anything else. They're higher prices per square foot, but overall monthly, they're far more affordable. And you think about the environment that this creates when you have a small office space and you're on this campus. I mean, because that's essentially what this is. It's a cool campus with all this retail. You've got all the restaurants. There's 4 bars, 2 with rooftop decks. I mean, there's so many options for you to work outside, work at a cafe, meet with clients on site, and you're only 5 minutes downtown. And tons of open free parking. Everything here as far as the restaurants go as well is optimized for to-go and delivery. So we actually have a drive-through lane where, Uber Eats or Postmates or even Lyft and Uber can drop people off, but they can run inside, grab food from the places and get out and go, which is really exciting. So we're thrilled about the opportunity here. Bruce and I are closing on that deal on Wednesday. We will probably be wrapping up our capital raise by, what do you think, Bruce? End of January, maybe beginning of February?
That's what I think. And for people to understand too, well, no, wait a minute, you're closing in 3 days. Well, so what's happening, for people that haven't invested in a development deal, the way it works is we're first going to buy the land, right? There's 2 lots that we're buying where this is going to be built. And then, the adjoining parcel we're getting also that has a vacant motel on it. So we close on that in 3 days. We're going to take down the land. Then we take out the construction loan in about 2 to 3 months after that. So that's why there's a little longer time for the cash raise than there is for the initial close. So we close on the property, and then we start working on construction loans and the actual groundbreaking on construction some months after that. So yeah, I think we'll probably run it through January, maybe mid-February. But we've had a lot of interest. So it might fill up sooner than that, but there's a good chance it runs into January, early February.
Yep, it's a good product. We've actually gotten commended by the innovative tech sector at Urban Land Institute for what we're doing here. So I'm really excited. They may be actually making this a case study, which is wonderful to see. Well, that's all we've got today. Appreciate you guys joining us for the Coronabus and our discussion on how we feel that will impact multifamily and commercial real estate investing. Thank you again for joining us for Commercial Conversations Over Coffee, and we will see you next week.
Later, guys.